So as we've been hearing, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been very vocal in his criticism of U.S. President Donald Trump and in his support of a unified Canadian response to Trump's aggressive trade tactics. Ford maintained that message track during an event in Hamilton, Ontario, a short time ago.
We're putting teams together across Canada to make sure we're all on the same page. As for the electricity, everything's on the table. Critical minerals, everything's on the table. But I can't do this alone, folks. I need every premier playing on Team Canada. And I'm confident that every single premier will be part of Team Canada.
For more analysis, let's bring in Christopher Cochrane. He's an associate professor of political science at the University of Toronto. Chris, you were listening to Premier Doug Ford. You've heard what Donald Trump has to say about Doug Ford. I mean, this feels like a bad movie or something. I don't know. What stood out to you?
Well, lots, and I mean, it's hard to know where to begin. Yeah. Certainly, I think as a premier of a province, reassuring workers and reassuring families that the governments will support them as they encounter headwinds from the U.S. tariff action is vital. I think some of the personal insults across the border, I can't imagine a scenario where those turn out to be helpful, even if I can imagine it resonating with the way a lot of people are feeling, especially people in industries most affected who are feeling most vulnerable. I still can't imagine that advancing Canada's objectives of trying to build jobs, build factories, and sort of secure the current state of our economy from the U.S. tariff action. And the language as well. It's interesting. I do find it interesting. One of the things I think about the election of Donald Trump is it's changed the vocabulary and the way people speak in politics. It's changed what people consider acceptable. And you really see signs of that extending out beyond Trump himself. Yeah. So this back and forth between the two of them, I really don't see how that helps Canada in any way, even if I think it might bolster to some degree Ford's image. He's an authentic person. He's seen as somebody who wears his heart on his sleeve. That image certainly it bolsters, but I don't think it helps Canada's trade relationship with the United States.
All right, Chris, though it is the story certainly of this hour, it's been a little while since we heard what Doug Ford had to say. So let's just have a listen to what he had to say about Donald Trump a few minutes ago.
Well, good. Something, I've been in this game a lot longer than he has. I got skin on me like an alligator. And you think an insult from him hurts me? Well, bring it on, buddy. I'm ready. Bring it on. You know something? I've dealt with guys like you my whole life. And guess what? You all become losers because you're a loser.
So there we are. I mean, that is extraordinary to hear, this back and forth between Donald Trump and Doug Ford. But it is a trade war that was started by the United States. We should point that out. And some of these tariffs are going to really hurt a lot of people in this country. So there is anger. What does this moment tell you about the path forward? I mean, I can't even imagine what could happen an hour from now.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've heard the word emotion described as an eruptive, an eruption that interferes with your long-term planning. And emotions are normal and they're good to have. And I think, you'd want a premier who's upset and angry about the consequences of these kinds of measures. But that doesn't mean it has to dictate everything you do. It certainly shouldn't have you broadcasting your strategies, targeting red states, talking about U.S. politics. Really, none of those things should be, in my view, in a press conference that obviously the Americans can read and respond to. And the reality is that in a trade war, there are two actors involved. There are two states involved here. The United States has a lot of levers that it can bring to bear. Canada does too, but so does the U.S. If the goal here is to get out of the trade war, to protect jobs, to ensure that Canadian premiers are all on the same page, I'm not sure it's helpful to have a premier singing from his own songbook, however understandable it might be. And so I think the energy he brings, the passion he has is very clear. I think it's genuine. But at the same time, I think there's strategy, there's deliberation, there's prudence, there's consensus building and coalition building. All of those things should happen behind the scenes, and the actions of the Canadian government need to be very deliberate. Rash, impulsive, emotional actions probably aren't going to be good for Canada in the long term against a partner, in this case, an adversary potentially in a trade conflict, the United States, that has an awful lot of tools at its disposal that can bring to bear.
And I think the U.S. president may have threatened, I mean, Donald Trump has threatened a surcharge on on electricity going to the United States. It seems like in this post that Donald Trump is threatening to cut the oil flow that happens to go through the oil that Canada uses, that happens to go from Western Canada through some American states back into Ontario and fueling a lot of homes and businesses in the rest of Canada. I mean, this is serious stuff.
Yeah, and Ronald Reagan's been out of U.S. politics for an awful long time, and this is not the Reagan Republican Party that I think a lot of people nostalgically look back and hope for, especially when it comes to trade, whether it becomes immigration. It's a different political movement. And I think Prime Minister Carney was exactly right when he said the United States has the right to change. It's a sovereign nation. It can change its orientation. And I think what Canadians, it seems to me, are slowly accepting, some quicker than others, and I think Carney is right as well, that we were maybe the first to recognize it, is that the world has changed. And what was the greatest asset for the country, the close relationship with the United States for 30 years, almost feels like a debt now because it's reduced our ability to withstand pressure. We're now very vulnerable to U.S. trade actions. And even if we're going to try to decouple that vulnerability, and this isn't about the next 2 years, Trump's been elected twice, there will be people that come after him. There's an unpredictability here. That's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to have to be done very deliberately. And this is really going to be the challenge. How do we, in a sense, pay back a debt that's accumulated over 30 years of economic integration?
Christopher Cochrane from the University of Toronto, thank you very much.